That's the net advantage for WPF and Silverlight. This is actually going to be broken up into multiple parts. The first part, which I'll be covering, is mainly the line of business controls. Then Nick Landry will be following up, talking about data visualization, and then Windows Phone. So like I said, I'm talking about the line of business. So my name is Brian Lagunas. I am the product manager for the net advantage for WPF and Silverlight line of tools. You can email me at blagunas@infosys.com. I blog at brianlagunas.com, and you can always hit me up on Twitter at Brian Lagunas. So with this release, we have a lot to show. I want to cover some of the new controls that came out. I also want to demonstrate some of the new features with these controls. Now, these controls are very big, so I can't get to every single feature that's out there, but I'll cover some of the common ones and some that might be kind of cool. And then at the end, I'm going to open up for a quick Q&A session, but I got to leave time for Nick to continue on with data visualization and Windows Phone. So this section is going to be approximately about 20-25 minutes or so. So let's go ahead and get started. The first set of controls I want to talk about is the new syntax parsing engine and the syntax editor control. So what this is basically a syntax parsing engine allows you to provide a EBNF file, a definition file, to create your own language with grammar and syntactical language rules, things like that. So basically, we build out a tree-like memory structure of a document according to the rules defined in your EBNF file. We provide error reporting and things like that. Now, the real reason the syntax parsing engine was created is to support our new XAML syntax editor control. So what is this? This control is actually really cool. This is just like the Visual Studio's code editor. So you get all the syntax highlighting, you get your split mode, horizontal, vertical, undo, redo, selection, basically all your common expected experiences when writing code within Visual Studio. We now have a control that allows you to drop that into your own application. So let's go ahead and take a look at a demo of how you would do something like this. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. I know there's a lag between what my view has and how long it takes to render on your screen, so I'm going to try to give it about a second or so between each action so your screen will refresh. So there's a couple ways to get the XAML syntax editor onto your design surface. One would be to open up your toolbox and select the XAML syntax editor and drag it onto your view. Another way would just to be to hand code it, like I always like to write my XAML declaratively. So I've declared a XAML syntax editor, but as you can see, nothing's really rendered in my design surface yet. Well, that's because the XAML syntax editor requires a text document. So we're going to set that property. To a new instance of a text document. Now, by default, the text document you're given is a plain text document, so it's plain text only. We support 3 languages out of the box: plain text, C#, and VB. So if I wanted my text document to support C# syntax highlighting and error reporting, I would set the text document language property to a new instance of a C# language. Okay, so now when I run this, let me give this a second for it to render on everyone's screen. You can see that I am getting syntax highlighting according to the rules and grammar of C#. Notice when I hit enter how I get that automatic indent very similar to Visual Studio. And there you go. And this works, like I said, for C#, Visual Basic, as well as plain text. Now let's say, well, Brian, what about a language that you guys don't have? Can I create my own language? Yes, you can create your own language. Just provided a EBNF file, and we can read in your definition. So, for example, we're looking at the syntax parsing engine. Now, what we're looking at here, this is the samples browser that ships with the product. So, what I'm showing you, you have available on your machine. If you haven't installed 12.2 yet, go to the website, download 12.2, and then you'll get all these new demos. So I'm going to click on language from EBNF. So what we have here is at the top, we have a EBNF file that provides the rules and structure of a language. This one happens to be XML. Now we have a little method here that's going to run, and we're going to convert that to an actual class that represents that implementation. Now that is used by the XAMPP syntax editor. So let's say I have the XAMPP syntax editor and I want to load an actual C# file. Well, I'm going to select the C#, I'm going to open a file, I have a file here, tab group pane region behavior. This is a region behavior I wrote for our XAMPP doc manager for Prism. And as you can see, I have all the syntax highlighting. That's pretty cool. Now, besides editing text and loading text, you can actually customize the editor itself. So let's take a look at the display. And the first thing I want to talk about is margins, custom margins. So on each edge of the editor, you have what's called a margin. So left, top, right, bottom. Now, this is basically a place for you to add functionality to the editor itself. Well, what kind of functionality are you talking about, Brian? Well, one good example of what you might use a margin for is bookmarks. So here we've created a sample that has a custom bookmark implementation. So I have a custom margin on the left-hand side of the editor, and when I click in this margin, I'm adding a bookmark. I'll scroll down. I'll add another bookmark. I'll scroll down. I'll add another bookmark. So now I can actually go to the line that those bookmarks have been declared. Very similar to Visual Studio. So that's a perfect example of when you might want to use a custom margin. Now you can also customize the editor itself. You can change the font size. You can make them bold, italic, right? All the stuff you would expect, background color. But I also want to point out that you can change the colorization of your syntax highlighting as well. For example, let's say that I want my keywords to be purple. And I want my identifiers to be red. Okay, so you have complete control over the editor, its colors and appearance, as well as the language highlighting, which is really cool. You also have splitting capabilities. So if we were to type some plain text in here, you have the ability to split your views. Once again, very similar to Visual Studio. And not only can you split horizontally, but you can also split vertically. And of course, you also have clipboard support, commanding, find, replace, search results. So let's say I want to search this document for a particular term or word. I can search that, and I'm given back a result, which actually tells me where this result is found, what line. So I can actually click on the result and navigate to that line. So here I'm on line 9, line 11, line 14. You get the idea. And of course, you have undo, redo. Okay, that's about it for the XAMPP syntax editor. Do we have any questions on the XAMPP syntax editor? Okay, so what's the target audience for this control? One of the biggest requests for this control came out of the basically enterprise about custom business rules. You might have a custom business engine where end users or an admin, super admin can declare custom rules that have to be parsed or whatever it may be in your application. But I actually see a much greater use for this is how many people have applications that have SQL stored in a database field. Maybe you're using it in Hibernate. Maybe you just need ad hoc queries that are stored off that need to be run on some type of user interaction. Well, we're going to be, not yet, it didn't ship with 12.2, but on the roadmap we do have a feature to implement SQL language. So you'll get all the syntax highlighting for SQL and all that stuff. And you'll also be getting IntelliSense in a future release. But imagine having the SQL language supported, or you can go grab an EBNF file and load it yourself right now. And now you can write those ad hoc queries according to the SQL language grammar rules and get error reporting and make sure all the syntax is correct to create dynamic ad hoc SQL that's stored in your database. Let's go back to my slides. Give that a second for that to show on everyone's screen. Do we have any more questions regarding the syntax editor? Okay. So the next big control that we worked on and released is the new Gantt control. Now this one is really cool. Everyone basically knows what a Gantt control is. Just imagine Microsoft Office, take out all the crap you don't care about, wrap it up into a nice pretty control, and that's what you got. It's a project management control. So the Gantt control is actually made up of two parts. On the left-hand side, you have a grid where your tasks are listed. On the right-hand side, you have a chart view of the scheduling of those tasks. So this is based on XAML. Not only can you bind to Microsoft Project files, so if you have Microsoft Project, you can export a project from Microsoft Project and load it directly into our control. If you don't have Microsoft Project, you can bind to any collection of your objects, right? So it doesn't have to be in a specific order, or your object doesn't have to have a specific structure. You can actually map your custom structure to the structure that our Gantt control is expecting. Okay. And of course, we have APIs that allow you to use either data source transparently. So let's go ahead and take a look at the XAMPP Gantt control. Now, once again, this is the first one in the sample browser that ships with the product. I want to give this time to load on everyone's screen. So the first one I'm going to show you is actually loading a Microsoft Project XML file. Now, this sample provides you with two, or you can choose one from your local disk. I'm just going to use one of the provided files. If I was going to choose a file for my disk, I would click the Open XML Project File. Instead, I'm going to choose Project File 1. It's going to load that. As you can see, we have now populated our XAMPP Gantt control with Microsoft Project data. We have tasks that you can add sibling tasks or subtasks. You can manually schedule or auto-schedule. Basically, your most basic functions of Microsoft Project are in this control. Not only that, but you also have access to interact with the grid itself. The chart itself. For example, I can click and drag elements within the chart side of the Gantt to change its start and end values. Or I can delete tasks, task dependencies. I can delete the link. Or I can create links. So if I were to scroll back over, let your screen refresh, I can click and drag to create a link between two tasks. Release, and now I have my task dependency. Not only that, As you can see, our sample browser ships with tons of examples on what you can do with our XAMPP control. Now, like I said, I can't cover all these things, but you can see the most common ones are here. We're talking about deadlines, we're talking about Slack, task dependencies, critical tasks, right? We have project calendars, working times, timescale units. So the timescale units would be on the chart view at the top. Right here we see 10, 21, 2012. Well, and under that you have 10, 21, 2012, 22. We can change the top tier formatting. Let's go something like days, hours. So you can change the timescale units to meet your needs, right? They're not set in stone. Now you can also change the format. So the top tier format, we're formatting as month, day, year. Well, we can choose something else, such as just month and day. And same thing for the middle tier formatting. So this is very flexible to meet your application's needs. We also have built-in commands that allow you to hook any type of navigation, such as our XAM ribbon, to the control itself through commanding. So I can just insert a task directly from our command bar, or delete tasks. We have task constraints. Of course, we provide you with venting. We have resources to set available resources for resource scheduling. We have custom calendars. We also have custom view providers. Now, this is kind of cool. This basically says that you can create your project column and table, basically a view of your project differently depending on what you want to see. For example, we have 3 different views here. Let's say you have an app that says, hey, I'm an administrator, I get one view, I'm a power user, I get another view, or maybe you just want customized views for yourself, you want to see it in different ways. Well, you can create custom views and switch between them at runtime. As you can see, as I switch between these views, my columns update, they change, they're different. Even the colorization on the chart side of the Gantt control changes as well. Let's go back to our slides. And besides those 2 huge controls, we also had some enhancements to our existing controls. Now, we're always enhancing our grids. Grids are very important to us, so the bread and butter of line of business applications. So for the XAM grid, we gave it data annotation support. What's this mean? This basically means you can annotate properties on your underlying object to control the display of those elements within the grid itself. So in this example, we're seeing the unit price being formatted. We see a display name attribute being used, and our group name is being controlled by the use of an annotation. This is great for validation of rules, relationships. So I will show you that example. Scroll down to our XAM grid. Display, and you can see through our sample browser, we tell you what's updated, what's new. The annotation side is new. So here, just by using the display attribute and display format, our short name is using the display attribute. The format is using the display format attribute. And then the group name, if you were to group, let's say, category, the group's category value is coming from the group name attribute, applied to the group by label. Okay? So it looks like I'm getting a little short on time, so I better speed things up just a little bit. Switch back over to the slides. The next thing we did was for the XAM data grid. Now, let me clarify. You just saw the XAM grid. Now you're seeing the XAM data grid. Okay, what's the difference between these two? The XAM grid is our cross-platform WPF and Silverlight grid. Okay, they share the exact same API across both platforms. The XAM data grid is WPF specific. This does not exist on Silverlight. This one's specific to WPF and takes advantage of a lot of the WPF platform features and functionality that you just don't get in Silverlight. Okay, so what we did here was we actually provided you the ability to provide your own logic for sorting and filtering, grouping, summarizing, things like that. So if you don't like the way our current grid does it, or maybe you need to hit the database to get different results that you just don't have available to you at runtime, we provide you the ability to use a manual mode for getting results to control how you sort or group or filter or provide summaries to your application, to your grid. So let's go ahead and switch back to the sample browser. Now I went under the XAM data grid, under performance. Here's an example here. So I'm going to go ahead and click the Generate Data button. On the left side, we're using the list collection view of data. On the right side, we're doing manual sorting using IEnumerable. So I'm going to go ahead and just sort by price. You can see it only took 0.01 seconds. We're going to sort by price on the other grid. This one's taking quite longer, 3.25. But we're showing that we're using different approaches. This one's using a collection view. This is using a manual sorting. Basically, you're hooking into the API. So if we were to go to the code behind, you're actually providing your own implementation for sorting. And the actual methods that actually implement the sorter are at the bottom. You're just resetting the data source based on the data you got in whatever rules or logic you need to implement. Okay, pretty cool. Switch back over to slides. Give that a second to render on your screen. Okay, next thing I want to talk about is the xamPivot grid. The xamPivot grid, we gave it Excel style filtering. So basically what this does is, as you can see from these screenshots, when you apply a filter, normally before you just had the tree-like filter to choose what you want to see and what you don't want to see. Well, now you can actually add a number of criteria to that algorithm that says, hey, I want to see the category that equals this, or begins with B, or starts with L, or a number of operands that you can apply to that filter. So we'll switch back to my desktop. Let's go ahead and find our pivot grid. We're going to go down to Organization Excel Style Filtering. I'm going to let the data load here for a second. This is coming from the AdventureWorks database. I will expand some rows and columns. So now I'm going to click the filter icon next to the title up here. As you can see, I get my tree, which is great. But I also want to add where a subcategory contains bike. Hit OK. And now my pivot grid is filtered accordingly. Another thing that we gave the pivot grid was what's called a super compact layout. Okay, well, what's that mean? Okay, so if you're familiar with the xamPivot grid, we have what's called a compact layout, which allows you to minimize the impact of the far left column as much as possible. Okay, well, we found a way to make that even smaller. So instead of compact, we're calling it super compact. So what I want to summarize is, as you saw, we had a new XAM Gantt control, basically Microsoft project wrapped up inside a control that you can use within your application. We have a very cool new XAM syntax editor, which is a code editor that gives you an experience very similar to Visual Studio's code editor. We have the external filtering and summaries for the XAM data grid. We added annotation support for the XAM grid, and of course, all of our controls, the entire 12.2 suite, installs perfectly and works seamlessly with Visual Studio 2012. So right now, I'm going to open this up for any questions, and coming up after this little session here is going to be data visualization and Windows Phone with Nick Landry. So it looks like we don't have any questions yet. If we don't have any questions, I guess Nick, you can go ahead and take over. I will continue to answer questions on the first part of this while Nick gives his presentation if you were to have any.
Brian, there was one question somebody asked earlier, which was for the syntax editor, what is the target audience of the control? And a few questions are queuing up right now, so you might want to go check on their Q&A manage.
Yep, so if you remember, I kind of addressed this a little bit for the XAMPP syntax editor. This is actually the answer that I provided during my demo. The target audience for this control is any scenario where you need some type of dynamic language generation at runtime. This comes in handy for business rules, dynamic business rules, workflow rules, dynamic ad hoc SQL that needs to be stored and run at runtime. Maybe you're building an end-user IDE for some type of custom language that you have for some custom solution you've written, right? Does the Gantt control create new Microsoft project files? The Gantt control will, I'm trying to remember at this point in time, it will export to XML. I can't remember if that's now or if that's coming in a service release. But yes, it will eventually export to XML file, which is basically what Microsoft Project is. How does the grid work with the entity framework and CRUD operations? That's not related to this talk, but if you send me an email, blagunas@infragenesis.com, or hit me up on Twitter, we can have a conversation about that, and we can get working on that. Can you please remind me why iCollection is faster in sorting? Well, iCollection is basically a collection provided or an interface provided by Microsoft. We use collection view for some sorting and filtering capabilities. It basically has all this stuff built in for you, provided by the framework at a very low level. So it is pretty fast at what it does. In the example you saw where we were manually sorting, it's always going to be slower when you take the responsibility off of the control and you're hitting some other type of logic, right? You're going to go hit a database, or you're going to run some type of link query, or you're going to do something custom and then reassign the data source. That will always be slower than using the default mechanisms of the grid itself. Does Infragenesis have any plan on creating a sophisticated tool for porting Windows Forms UI to WPF? We don't have any plans at the moment, and it appears not many other people have. I don't know of anyone who's tried to attempt that. The Windows Forms and WPF are so vastly different. I'm not sure if there's a lot of value in creating such tool for any company. When is the IntelliSense for the syntax editor predicted to be released? We are really trying to get that for the 13.1, and if we can't get it for 13.1, because we're working on another really great control, if we can't get it in there, it would be in the 13.2. Any truth to the rumor Silverlight has no future roadmap? Regarding Silverlight, Microsoft has been pretty hush-hush on its plans with Silverlight, so the community consensus is that Silverlight is dead. No matter what the community census is, we have customers that depend on Silverlight within their organization to develop rich internet applications to their customers. So we will continue to support Silverlight with every new control we write. When we write it for WPF, it's going to be written for Silverlight. So we will continue to support Silverlight with the new controls and new features, even if the community consensus is that Silverlight is dead. So right now, due to time constraints, I'll continue to answer these questions through the QA manager. Nick, go ahead and take over.
All right. Okay. So let's get started on the second phase of this presentation. So my name is Nick Landry, and today I will be talking about the second part of our XAML controls, which includes both Silverlight and WPF. And then I'll be following up with Windows Phone as well. I'm a senior product manager here at Infragistics. I manage all of our mobile tools and also all of our data visualization controls and tools across different platforms. If you want to reach me, you can contact me at activenic@infragistics.com to give me feedback about controls, or if you have overall questions about directions and roadmaps. You can also, I highly recommend following me on Twitter. It's a good place to reach out to me and ask me some questions at ActiveNick. If you want to read my blog, it's on the Infragistics community blog site, and it's at activenic.net. Okay? So, for this second part now, what I will be covering includes, first of all, I'll just give you a quick idea of the vision as to what data visualization actually means. Why is it that we are driving so many new features on the DV side of things, and where does it fit into the entire corporate vision of what we do with our controls? Then we're going to dive into some of the new features in 12.2, including the geographic map, which is both for Silverlight and WPF, and also the DataChart. Note that a lot of features I'm covering here are also available in some of our other platforms like jQuery, for example, although for the purpose of this webinar right now, we'll be focusing strictly on the XAML platform, both WPF and Silverlight. And then I'll be giving you a quick overview of some of the new controls we're introducing for Windows Phone, and then we'll leave it up to a Q&A where you can ask questions either of myself or Brian is going to stick around, so if you have more questions about what Brian just covered, you can just go ahead and go into the Q&A, and then Brian will be able to answer them while I'm covering the rest of my session. So one of the things that's really important to understand is, where does data visualization fit into all things? People are used to dealing with raw data, with data basically lives in databases and files. It could be in multidimensional cubes or living in the cloud or web servers. And then the traditional scenario is then people build standard applications to connect to that data, and they're going to use a lot of tables and grids to be able to display that data, edit it directly, maybe do some calculations on columns, stubs, grouping, summaries, sorting, and filtering. A lot of people basically consume their data straight into the grid, and the problem at this point is that what you're pretty much seeing is a slightly filtered version of your data, but it's really hard to make sense of it, because one of the problems with grids is that you can only see so many rows at a time, and you cannot see the big picture. You can't see the trends or the patterns either. So don't get me wrong, grids are highly critical because they're one of the best ways to go and edit and go play with your data directly. But once you want to take one level of abstraction higher, that's when you need to move into data visualization, where your data is then presented as visual information on screen using all sorts of controls and widgets, whether it's maps, charts, gauges, bullet graphs, pie charts, Sparklines are also known as microcharts, and tree maps, and there's a lot of different controls that are used in data visualization. So this notion of organizing multiple controls together to provide an overall view of your data where you can easily see trends and patterns is known basically as a dashboard, and that's the key part of the data visualization principles. Then once your dashboard is created, your users are more easily able to slice and dice through the data, drill into detail, or take a step back and look at the big picture where they can see trends and patterns. And that's when your data, which became information when you transformed it for visualization, now becomes knowledge, because it's assimilated by the users, it's analyzed, it's consumed, and then it becomes knowledge, and your business users then can use that knowledge to drive their business decisions. Because in the end, you drive your decisions from knowledge, not from the raw data. Raw data sometimes will lead you to the wrong conclusions, so that this notion of going from data to information to knowledge, and then using that to drive decisions, is what we call business intelligence. And data visualization is a key part of this. So moving right along, this is where things fit in our basic tenets of what we do here at Infragistics. First of all, we're all about performance, ease of use, and styling. So we want to make sure that whatever data you have, however large data sets you have, we will be able to to allow you to play with them, render them, slice through it, and display all that data in our controls. And at the same time, we want to make sure that you're going to be able to deal with a lot of data, but you're also going to keep high performance. So for us, performance and scalability are not mutually exclusive. Everything needs to be easy to use, of course. So every release, we always try to make it easier and easier to write Let's Go to get more features out of our controls. Because in the end, it's all about making it easy for you to create your applications. And then finally, you all have your look and feel. You're using designers to create more advanced user interfaces, especially with WPF and Silverlight and also the different web technologies and on mobile. So making sure that you can style our controls to really fit into the brand and look and feel that you want to create is something that's very important for us, because it's not just about creating applications, but your dashboards, for example, have to be visually pleasing, and they have to make it easy for people to find the information and the answers that they're looking for. So that everything ties into an exceptional user experience, and that's something that is propagated across all of our controls. So let's start digging into some of the new features in the geographic map. The Geo Map is actually quite important, because when you look at data visualization in general, I'm trying to move the slide here. When you look at data visualization in general, there are a lot of different ways that you can display information, but it's said that over 80% of most data out there actually has a geospatial component attached to it. So it doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be a direct latitude and longitude attached to your data, but if there's an address with a piece of data, or if, for example, you have a product and that product is tied to a company, that company has an address, or maybe it has a destination where it's going, or maybe there's going to be a route, or maybe somebody has a territory. If you're in the medical field, then there's patients, there's doctors, all these people have locations. If you're in real estate and defense, law enforcement, there's a lot of components there where you have to deal with territories. So most data usually have a geospatial attached to it, a geospatial component attached to it, and from an address you can easily use geocoding services, for example, to convert this into latitude and longitude. So looking at why would you use a geographic map? And all the maps you see here are samples taken from our own Geo Map. First of all, is our geographic map basically allows you to work with multiple tile sets and multiple platforms. So today, in terms of platforms, we already support our shared XAML platform, which includes WPF and Silverlight, and we also have the web platform with our new Ignite UI product, which covers HTML5 and jQuery. And in terms of tile sets, you can already use OpenStreetMap tiles, you can use Bing Maps, you can use CloudMade Maps, and we already have a sample also showing you how to create a custom tile set provider using MapQuest. We're not done there. We are bringing more tile sets in our next release. So I can't give you too much of a teaser right now, but let's just say that we're bringing you more platforms, especially on the mobile world, and we're also bringing you more tile sets that are, so you're going to be seeing a lot of new features on that front in 13.1. For 12.2, I'll be showing you some of the new features. Some of the things you can do, for example, is for those of you that like to use free imagery. So OpenStreetMap is an open source project that basically catalogs maps from across the world. OpenStreetMap is very inherently web-based. So what that means is it's kind of hard to use in desktop applications. With our shared XAML platform and our geographic map, then you can easily integrate OpenStreetMaps inside of your desktop GIS application. At the same time, if you're, for example, if you're a Bing Maps customer, then, or any customer, even if you're using advanced controls like the Bing Maps control that comes from Microsoft, using our tile set and our control will enable you to basically bind to a lot more data. We support literally millions of data points on a map. We support multiple types of geographic series. So whereas the Microsoft controls are very good about showing routes and showing push pins on a map, our controls are very, very good at showing massive amounts of data and easily binding to that data. Then the other thing also is, let's say you want to start with one map provider, and then later you want to switch map providers. If you were tying yourself to the control of a certain map provider, migrating later becomes a lot of work because then you have to rip out that control, change all of your code, and then re-enable all your functionality around that new control. Well, with our geographic map, you could technically, for example, start with free imagery with OpenStreetMap, and then later down the road, let's say that you have higher and higher GIS needs, and you want to start using more professional services with Microsoft Big Maps, for example, then you could get like a subscription with Microsoft Big Maps and then immediately switch the tile set, enter your credentials for Big Maps in the control, and you don't have to recode your application at all. So that's a great benefit because switching providers on a project is something that can consume a lot of time and energy and money. I've seen a lot of projects like this in the past, and definitely migration costs can be very high. And we are saving you those migration costs. So any kind of data-driven custom GIS scenario is going to be ideal for this map control. We already have over 8 different geographic data series that are supported in our map control, and those geographic series can be used to display data either as using shapefiles, using data points, using polylines, and that data can come from files, from different data sources. Anything where you can bind the data directly in .NET is going to be supported as long as you can point to what are the latitude and longitude properties inside of your data. You can also get a lot of advanced mapping features without having to pay for those services. So some people like to use OpenStreetMaps because, well, it's free. The problem is that you're not going to get a lot of very advanced features there. It just gives you the imagery, but you have to code everything yourself. Our control will give you very advanced mapping features with all those data series, the ability to display markers, to zoom in, to use touch interactions on tablets and on touch displays. So the kind of things you would expect in a professional tool, but this time you're actually using free map imagery. The cool thing also is that maps are part of the DV family of controls. So that means you can easily integrate with other controls as well by writing code that's going to bind them with data charts, with timeline, with pie charts. You can even, for example, use controls themselves as markers on the map. So if you want every marker on the map to be a pie chart, then you can also do it because we support templates to allow you to use different controls inside of a map. And then one, two, testing. Yeah, we're good now? Okay. That's interesting. Okay, so hopefully you guys can hear me now. So basically what I was saying is that you have the ability to bind your data over time using the motion framework, which is built into our DataChart and into our geographic map to show data over time, and I have a cool sample that I'll be showing you about this. So what are some of the new features that we brought to our Geo Map? Our Geo Map is already extremely powerful. It's the most powerful map control you can find out there, and we're not stopping there. We keep bringing you a lot more value. There were some cool features that we introduced in 12.1 because we just couldn't wait to bring them to you, so we didn't have a chance to wrap them up completely. Well, now we put the final bow on top, and some of those TTP features from 12.1 are now shipping as RTM features in 12.2. Including, and I'll be showing you the slides first and then some demos, including the scatter area series where you can show thousands and literally like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of data points on a map. And then what it's going to do is use triangulation to create interpolation of those colors in between the data points. So for example, if you have data like here that shows precipitation levels on the map, then you can see where the precipitation levels are higher, where they're lower. And so, for example, the yellow color shows you where the precipitations are higher. And you can also pick multiple interpolation modes. I'll show you in a sample. Another one is the contour line series. It's very similar to the scatter area series, but instead of interpolating colors in between the points, it's actually creating contour lines, which is also known as an isoplat map. These kinds of maps can be used for many things from precipitation to barometric pressure. They can also be used for altitude, for depth. So this is a kind of visualization that the cool thing with contour lines is that you can still see your map imagery very well underneath. So if you have like multiple series on a map, like for example, if you're using a proportional symbol series to show one set of data and also a contour line, then the contour line is not going to be obstructing your data too much compared, for example, to the scatter area series, which is usually more of a dedicated view, where at this point your data takes pretty much most of the space, especially when you have heavy clouds of data like we see on that top image right here. The next feature inside of our Geo Map that is shipping as RTM is the shape control series, and I'll show it to you in action because this one definitely you need to see it live. Instead of just rendering shapes, the shapes are actually templated controls. And these templated controls, you can create things like highlights, you can detect mouse movements, and then you can change colors, you can create an outline around them. So the cool thing is there are all sorts of interactions that are available via the Visual State Manager. And then finally, the other series that is made available as an RTM feature, actually this one is still a CTP feature, I should note. So this one is a brand new map series that was not available in 12.1. It is not RTM yet, though it's still CTP feature. We'll be closing it as RTM for 13.1. But it's one of those things where we just want to make sure that you can start using it now. So that's why instead of delaying its release until 13.1, we decided to release it to the community so you can start playing with it and give us your feedback. That's the proportional symbol series. Proportional symbol series is kind of like a simple data points on a map, but each data point basically has a different size, even a color. So think of it as a bubble series that is displayed on a map. And you can express more values this way because it's not just about the location and tooltips. You can also use different colors to show the intensity of the data. You can also show different sizes. So we have a sample in our browser, for example, that shows city population. And next on the map, before I jump into the browser quickly, we have the overview pane, which is a navigation pane. I'll show it to you in action. It's going to be easier this way in our demo. And then there's the triangulation. A lot of these series, like the scatter series or the contour line series, require a lot of triangulation of data. So if you have so much data that the triangulation becomes a little too heavy sometimes, what you can do is if your data, if you know that your snapshot of data is not going to be real time, let's say it changes every day or every hour or things like that, you could pre-triangulate the data and then make it available via ITF files. So you can save the triangulation in an ITF file and load the triangulation later. So this way you avoid doing all the triangulation at runtime, which is a great way to deal with massive amounts of data when triangulation is needed. So before I continue, what I'm going to do is just switch over to my desktop here so I can show you share desktop. Okay. I can show you the sample browser. Okay, I see that everybody sees my desktop right now. It's still refreshing. I know it's taking a little bit of time here. Hopefully the maps are going to come across okay, because I did not increase the amount of colors to make sure that you're going to be able to browse the maps properly this way. So for example, we optimize performance even more in this release. We always push performance and make sure that we can load a lot of data to show interactions between data and our okay, there we go. Refresh should be worked now. To show the motion framework in action, and hopefully this is going to come across well, you can try this out. This basically shows you all sorts of flights. Right now, in live meeting, to be honest with you, it looks a little choppy because the planes are kind of jumping around. But I can tell you, this is like running at a smooth 30 plus frames per second. So if you download the product and try it out, just go to the sample browser under airline traffic map, and you will see this running extremely smoothly. We have this sample on Serverlite, on WDF. We also have a similar sample as well on jQuery. So this shows different points of data over time on a map. And it seems it's not really rendering very well now. So I'm going to stop that. The proportional symbol series right here. So you can see I have a map. The colors, by the way, don't judge the colors based on what you see on screen. Right now, I'm only displaying 256 colors so that we get a decent performance on the transfer over live meeting. But it allows you to basically zoom in, and you see here, it shows me different cities across the world. Not all cities, of course, this is just a subset of all cities. And you can actually hover over different cities, so you can see tooltips about their population. So the larger the population, then the larger the bubble. But at the same time, you can also choose a different palette of colors to show exactly how the population level will affect the color of the bubble that you have. So I don't have really time to show you some of the code behind like right here, but if you want, you can always switch to the XAML view here to see exactly how the series has been created. You can just look at a snippet that shows what is really pertinent to this sample right here. And there's a little bit of code behind, but honestly, it's not too much because it's pretty much standard code, especially when it comes to the interactions inside of that little panel right here at the top left. So I'll wait for this to refresh. Okay. We also have the high density series. High density series, what you're seeing here is a map of Australia. And on this map, and again, this is not doing it justice via live meeting because the refresh is kind of slow, but we have smooth animation with zoom in and zoom out, and we literally have over 100,000 data points on this map. And then when I scroll the map around, I can even like tooltip over different things in here because every one of those places are basically come from a geo database of named places in Australia. We also have other samples that show this in the US and other places. We've literally tried this with over millions of data points right now in the United States or in other locations worldwide, but this is definitely a very cool feature when you have to show a lot of data on a map. Contour line series right here, you can see. So this is using pre-triangulated data, so I can zoom in and I can easily see the different levels, and then you can even change the color levels if you want. So for example, I can change the palette right here. See, it changes the colors, so depending on the amount of data. And then when you hover over a specific line, this tells you this is the 0.2 precipitation line. Right here we have 0.4, here we're at 0.6. So basically it shows you elevation, and the higher, the more we get into the intense areas, like right here, 1.6 of precipitation, then I think it's in inches, 1.6 inches of precipitation, then you can see the color is more intense depending on what is at the low end or the high end, the low end or the high end of that palette of colors. And then the shape control series is the one I wanted to show you right here. It shows you how you can have multiple controls on where the shapes basically are based on templated controls, and when you hover, it actually creates a nice highlight effect. Right now, unfortunately, over live meeting, you just see this kind of thick gradient instead of the smooth gradient I have here, but you can basically see the highlight is kind of buzzing and then fades back as I hover over different countries, and then each and one of those has a tooltip as well on the country. So this is another great way to use shapefiles directly on a map. I'm just going to zoom through the last few features here. Let me go back to my deck. Okay, so let me here. Let me go back to my deck. Whoops. Let me just. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to finish going through some of these. Unfortunately, we're kind of running out of time here, so I want to make sure we can answer some questions. But all these things are available via our sample browser, so you can play with them. The data chart, actually, this time around, what did we do? Well, first of all, we've improved the performance even more. So actually, this is showing a map here, because a lot of the performance work that we've done on the data chart also affects the map. But another area where we pushed a lot is around touch interactions to support multi-touch. A lot more people now are using Silverlight and WPF, especially WPF, on like tablets that are touch-enabled. So we've added more features and events to make sure that you can use features like finger panning and different multi-touch gestures that are tablet-friendly, like the pinch and zoom. You can also do a press and hold directly on a series, so you can show tooltips or dragging tooltips around directly on a chart. Very quickly, on the Windows Phone side of things, so you're probably already familiar with our Windows Phone controls. If you haven't tried them, definitely make sure you do. They're a bundle as part of the Ultimate, but also as part of our Mobile Advantage. Mobile Advantage is actually one of our new suites that we've introduced in the last few months, and it gives you native controls for Windows Phone, and then we have new controls that are available for iOS called Nucleus. We have a community pack for Android called Iguana UI, and we also have Ignite UI, which is our latest version of our Infragistics jQuery controls. So with Mobile Advantage, you basically get the full spectrum of native controls whenever you need high-end performance and you want a very competitive app, or if you're building an application where now you know that you're going to be looking more for something that's more cross-platform, then you can use jQuery controls using Ignite UI, and then you can even wrap your controls using PhoneGap, for example, the native version of your mobile application, and deploy it across multiple platforms. So with those controls, that's what I just said. You basically have the best of both worlds. You have native controls. You have for Windows Phone, Android, iOS, and you also have web controls for jQuery and HTML5. Some of the new controls we've introduced in this version today of Windows Phone 12.2, we have the autocomplete box, which allows you to basically feed a list, and then you can start typing in the list, and it filters down the data. You have a context menu. We also have a date picker. We have a time picker and a list picker. So the date picker and the time picker are standard first-party experiences we see in Windows Phone, allowing you to use scrollable lists to choose dates and choose times on your phone in your application. So it's kind of like the Windows Phone equivalent of the combo box in a way. Same thing with a list picker. In this case, you would feed in your own list of control of items, whether they have images or checkboxes or things like that. You can use your own template. And the list picker basically pops that list open, like the one we see here with a list of fruit. And then once the user has selected something, it goes back to the control with the selection they picked. The toggle switch is kind of like a checkbox in a way, but it's either on or off. And we have new controls that are in CTP format. We haven't finished all the testing, but we wanted to release it to the community so you can start testing with it and playing with it and give us your feedback, which are a highly requested calendar control, and also the tile manager, which allows you to work with multiple cards of data and then cycle through those cards and then zoom in and drill down into a card like we see at the bottom right. So I know that's a very, very fast view of our controls on the Windows Phone side of things. If you want to play with it, we have a new sample browser. We also RTM the Sparkline and the motion framework on our chart. So the Sparkline allows you to use these little microcharts, either bar, line, area, or win-loss scenarios. Whenever you need to load multiple charts inside of a grid or a list, then that's the best way to do it is using a Sparkline because it's a much more lightweight control. And the motion framework, you have to see it in action to really appreciate it. What I would recommend is simply go to my blog, to activenig.net. I published an article in, I think it was in July, about charts in motion on Windows Phone. So go check that blog article, and then I also have a video sample in there that shows animated charts depending on the variations in time on a data series. We also have support for Visual Studio 2012 in all of our Windows Phone controls, and we also support the upcoming Windows Phone 8 SDK. So whether you're building applications for Windows Phone 7.5 or for Windows Phone 8, then you can use the Infragistics Net Advantage for Windows Phone controls in your project, and it's going to work very well. And we also have a new sample browser. It's still pending approval. Microsoft is a little slammed right now with their approval process. So for now, it's still the 12.1 sample browser that's available. But if you don't want a quick shortcut, you just go to bit.ly/IGWP-app. This is case sensitive, by the way, but if you go to IGWP-app at bit.ly, then it's going to redirect you to the Windows Phone store where you can download our sample browser and look for the new version in the next, I would say, week or two, depending on how long it takes for Microsoft to approve it. So that's about it. So just a quick reminder, in 12.1 earlier this year, we merged line of business and DB controls in XAML. So that means if you had Net Advantage for Silverlight, then you automatically get all of the Silverlight data visualization controls now since 12.1. Same thing with WPF. If you had Net Advantage for WPF, then you get the data visualization controls. If you have NetAdvantage for .NET, then it means you also get the data visualization controls, which used to be an ultimate feature. So if you have not tried the data visualization controls yet because you didn't know that you basically have them now included with your subscription, then please go try them out and give us your feedback. We have a lot of new controls and features and functionality that were added in this release. As you can see, this was just a very quick overview of what we've introduced. If you want to give us some feedback, if you have some questions, go to our forums. You can also hit our community blogs where we have a lot of our evangelists and product managers that are blogging about our controls, about all sorts of things in the industry, about trends and directions. And if you want to reach some key product managers related to the product that you heard about today, you can reach out to Jason Barris, who is the VP of Product Management here at jasonb@infragistics.com, and follow him on Twitter at Jason Barris. Brian Lagunas, whom you've heard in the first part of this webinar, is at blagunas@infragistics.com, at Brian Lagunas on Twitter, and I'm Nick Landry. I manage mobile and data visualization. You can reach me at activenick@infragistics.com, and on Twitter you can follow me at activenick. So with that, this is a quick summary of what we've seen right now on DV. So I'm just going to skip over that and go straight to the final Q&A. So I know we're running a little overboard here, so thank you very much for sticking around. If you're happy with the information, everything that you've seen here, if you don't have the controls yet, please go ahead to our website at infragistics.com and you can download all of those controls for free, for a free evaluation. Make sure that you try them out. The sample browser that I've demonstrated and that Brian demonstrated is also included with the package, so you get all the source code with it. You definitely need to see it to believe it, and the controls perform extremely well, especially when you have right them at your fingertips. Otherwise, I'll wish you a great day, and for the others, if you want, we can do a final Q&A. So we'll be going through the questions and address them along the way. So Q&A seems to be light. I know that I grabbed a couple of people. Yeah, I know we have some people here. I want to thank Graham Murray also, who's someone that you've probably seen blogging and answering questions on the forums, for joining the presentation and answering some questions while we were doing this. I guess I don't see any more questions right now, so let's give it another 2 minutes. If you have some questions, you can go ahead. Otherwise, we'll wish you a great day, and stay tuned for other webinars about NetAdvantage products and other products in our mobile advantage that we'll be releasing in the next week or so. Is there a recorded version of this webinar? Yes, there will be a recorded version of this webinar, so that means since you probably thought it was so amazing that you have to share it with your colleagues, then we will make sure to post the information on our website. Just go to infragistics.com. Please mute your phones, people. I can hear some music. The question is, can you mute people? Oh, the recording? Okay, the recording is going to be available within, say, what, a day or so?
It'll be available soon, yeah.
Yeah, we just need to set it up. If it's not available later today, it should be up by tomorrow. If you mean the product, when will it be available? Everything you've seen here today is already available right now. So you can go and download everything from our website at infragistics.com. Okay, other questions? Okay, so I want to start developing Android apps. I'm new to development of Android apps. Can you tell me which tool would be helpful for me? So for Android, of course, this is a new environment. You basically need the Android SDK. People use Eclipse typically to work with this. We will be posting a couple blog posts very soon on how to get started with Android development using our new Iguana UI controls. So stay tuned to the Infragistics blog, and you should see something within, I would say, no more than a week or two, and we'll be publishing more information about this on how to get started. Same thing with iOS. We'll be publishing more information there. And we also have findings on iOS side for MonoTouch. So we'll also be posting some blogs. So we're still catching up on all the blogs now because when a new release comes, of course, we have this overload of information. We can't release everything at once. But definitely it's on our very, very near-term roadmap to be publishing some blog posts about getting started with some of those controls, including Iguana UI for Android, iOS, Nucleus for iOS, and Windows Phone, and jQuery. So right now, the suite of controls only supports iOS and Windows Phone. On the mobile side, native controls, we support iOS, Windows Phone, and we also have the Iguana UI Android Community Pack. So we support iOS, Windows Phone, and Android. We don't have as many controls on Android and iOS as Windows Phone because a lot of the Windows Phone controls are based on the XAML platform that we moved over since Windows Phone was based on Silverlight. But we keep investing basically in those controls, and you're going to see more and more of those. But yes, we do have native for iOS, Windows Phone, and Android. But also for mobile web, you can use Ignite UI to create mobile web applications. And we have a lot of controls for mobile web and also jQuery mobile. So this is already available in Ignite UI. And you can also use Ignite UI, whether it's jQuery or jQuery mobile, to create phone gap applications that are then wrapped as native apps. I cannot see, okay. No, you're not supposed to see the questions that are being asked right now. They're just sent directly to the moderator. Will you support MonoTouch and Mono for Android? We already support MonoTouch for iOS. So when you download Nucleus, which is the iOS controls, there is going to be a folder inside of the installation that includes beta bindings, the DLLs that you need for MonoTouch support, allowing you to use C# for iOS development. Mono for Android is still on the back burner for now. It's still on the backlog. We just released our new controls for Android, so we're going to have to see exactly what the demand is there. And if there's a lot of demand and a lot of interest around Android and Mono for Android, we might have controls for that. But if you're looking at, for now, for iOS and MonoTouch, we already have those. So just download Nucleus, the trial, or buy the full product, and then you will get a folder in your installer called MonoTouch that includes the beta binding DLLs. Okay, so I guess that's about it for Q&A at this point. So thank you very much, people, for joining. Again, you can follow Brian Lagunas at Brian Lagunas on Twitter, and you can follow myself, Nick Landry, at ActiveNick on Twitter. So thanks again for joining, and wishing you a great day. Keep following us at Infragistics.com. Thank you.